Okay, so this is PvP lesson number 3. We have Quazars with us today. Very nice. He
Hello.
is, yes, say hello, Quazars.
Hello.
Okay, he has been my Helge partner for what, 6 months?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna start with 2v2 Helgates. I think one of the first things that even before you start doing 2v2s, is finding a person you can commit the time with and stick with, like me and Quasars. And even if you're absolute garbage at start, over time you'll get better and you can actually start getting better. And even if you like you two are like good at the beginning, as long as you just keep playing with each other, you're just gonna get better. And yeah. Also another thing, just try and focus on one build in the beginning and learning that one build and just keep grinding that build so that you can actually get a feel of what other people are using in 2v2s, learn the meta, and learn the mechanics of Hellgates. So, 2v2 Hellgates, there's 3 bosses. You will spawn near 2 of them, and you will go to one of the bosses, you'll kill one of the bosses, and once all 3 bosses are dead, the middle chest will spawn. Middle chest has Gucci loot, plus has most of the fame that you will get in a Hellgate. But, unfortunately or fortunately, there will be another team inside, and you'll have to fight that team to get that sweet, sweet loot in the middle. So, how many people here are or have ever been in a Hellgate?
Me.
Everyone?
Everyone?
Me.
Quasars has been in a Hellgate, alright. Devils has been in a Hellgate. Checkit has been in a Hellgate. I think everyone's been in
Yup.
a Hellgate, right? If you haven't been in a Hellgate, you should. Yeah. I was in a blue 2v2 once. Congratulations, Quasars. So, you lost. Did you die? Did you lose your gear?
No, you don't lose gear
Oh,
in
you don't
blues.
lose gear in blues?
For any begin, yeah, I don't. Sorry for jumping in, but yeah, for any beginner 2v2, you can just either duel at the market or go into blue 2v2s. You run into Pepegas. Good idea.
Oh, yes. Very smart indeed.
But in blue Hellgates, you run into 8.2 Pepegas because they are not
Yes, but
so
It's
they
good.
don't lose the
That's good.
gear.
that's good. It's a harder matchup.
Practice.
It's practice. So yeah,
Good.
blue zones have Hellgates, but only in tier 3 zones, right.
Tier 4.
Tier 4? Are
Yep.
you sure
Tier
about
4
that?
blue zones has 2v2 Hellgates.
Alright. And
So every
yeah.
royal has access to 2 different ones.
Okay. So yeah, tier 4 blue zones, so Ferndale and Birch Copse. Birch Copse. Also Drywater Meadow should also have a Hellgate. I can't see it. Oh, is it? Yeah, there it is. So you can find a Hellgate on the map with these 4 squares plus a little dot in the middle. That's the Hellgate spot. And you can also see it on the minimap, and there's gonna be a big orange circle or a big red circle. Orange is 2v2, red circle is 5v5. Normal 2v2 Hellgates spawn every 6 minutes, right? And normal red Hellgates or 5v5 Hellgates spawn every 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And for the record, for those interested in blue ones, they spawn every 3 minutes. So
Alright,
blue
blue
zone
ones.
Hellgates every 3 minutes.
Huge. Every 3 minutes for blue Hellgates. So yeah. So we've gotten find a person that you love and make him yours or it or yeah, and then just keep
I'm
doing
back.
Hellgates with that person. Use the same build. Use a build that you're comfortable with, and just keep playing. You're gonna lose a lot in the beginning, but over time you will start winning a lot. And even like in Hellgates, even if you're like a new player, and there's gonna be like a lot of trash players like who have absolutely no clue and who are using like absolutely horrible builds, you'll still be making a profit overall in Hellgates. So I do recommend going to Hellgates because you're always gonna be making profit. And you're not gonna actually lose money, and you're just gonna gain experience from doing that.
So you can go with like 4.1 gear?
Yeah, you can go 4.1. You can overcharge if you want. You don't have to overcharge, but it doesn't cost much to overcharge. It's like 30k, and you'll get like another extra 100 IP. Soft cap in Hellgates is 1000 IP, right? Quasars?
900, I think.
Which one?
Orange 2v2.
It's 1,000 and
Yeah.
it's 20%, or is it 50?
It's 50%.
Cap. It's 50.
50%
Yeah, it's 50.
soft cap.
Yeah, it's 1,000 and 50%.
Yeah. So if you're like 900 IP, you should probably overcharge. But if you're like 1000 IP with 4.1, then maybe you don't want to overcharge, since you'll only be getting 50. Or utter trash should just go with 4. Yeah, exactly. And there's also a bunch of rats who are like soloing and just there to try and get the middle loot or kill some bosses on the outside. So I would say just start doing some Hellgates, and you'll learn what to play, what to not play, and what to.
Is it good XP there?
Yeah, it's
I mean,
it's
it's
amazing fame. Like it's not as good as
Fives.
fives. It's not as good as fives fame, but it's solid fame. It's like
50k for a metal chest.
yeah, 50k fame
If
for
you're
middle chest.
2.
Yeah, per person. Plus 5k fame per outer boss. So
Plus you get on average 3.5 tomes. So that's if you don't sell those, that's also
Yeah.
fame.
that's like 35k fame average. Unless you're Quasars and you get more tomes.
Uh-huh.
So different kinds of there's not really that many kind of different like aspects of builds. You can have a healer DPS, you can have 2 DPS, you can have a stun DPS or like a lockdown plus DPS. You can also have a rat, which is a category of its own. And is there anything else?
Double warbow.
I mean, double warbow is a category of itself, I guess. It's a kitey build. It's a
It's unique enough, I think, to
unique
warrant its
unique
own.
enough. What about double pike? Is that unique enough?
I think that counts for the Allen / stun burst double. You know,
Yeah.
like the Baden quarterstaff or Baden.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
So, I would say the most common is probably either double DPS or healer DPS, right?
Or Pepega 4.1.
Or the pages like some actual like shitters and rats. So we're just gonna go over like some of the proper meta builds for each of these, or just something that you might want to try. So healer DPS, healer you can go holy or nature, both are viable, but currently
No.
holy is a bit stronger than nature.
And holy nature isn't viable. To be honest,
Nature isn't viable, he says. Wow.
no, it's not viable.
It's not viable, okay. Nature is not as viable as holy.
It's pretty trash.
So
To be honest.
as a holy healer,
Don't go nature.
don't go
unless
nature
you're ratting.
unless you're ratting. Okay, but I'll still say that you can go nature if you really want to, but you're just hurting your team. So try and go holy instead. So the only holy staff that is being used right now is life touch because of its E, and Quasars can talk about the healers right now, I think, because I don't
Yeah.
have nearly as much experience as Quasars has in healing.
Okay. The E on the life touch has a lot of utility. Mainly, it's super useful against stun lock all-in comps because you can cleanse any stuns or roots. Or it's also useful against on the off chance you run into cultist cowls because you can cleanse the cultist cowl. Especially if you're running flash heal, which I would recommend because it's a lot stronger. You have a lot more healing output. A lot of utility basically for all the stun DPS. Not really accuracy. Yeah, it's not really used for the healing. Just used for your. If you're running flash heal, then you only need to spam your Q basically. But yeah, it's mostly for the utility. It has a lot of uses. It's just such a good generalist tool. If you run into a stun like DPS and you don't have it, if you don't have time to swap to Merc Hood, if you don't have an option to swap, then you're just gonna die basically.
Some other like armors that healers use, usually a Fiend Robe or a Robe of Purity, but they can also bring a Mage Robe, which is a bit rare though. But usually you might have a Mage Robe as a swap, right? Do you bring a
If
Mage Robe as a swap?
if you can afford an Avalonian Robe of Purity, then use that. Otherwise, use a Fiend Robe, and if you run into healer DPS or any comp that runs the Robe of Purity, then bring a Mage Robe swap because the Mage Robe completely counters
Yeah.
the Robe of Purity. If you can't afford it, then just bring a Mage Robe swap with a Fiend Robe for like normal.
Yeah.
The default.
Yeah, and since the current meta with healers is using Flash Heal, you usually use a Royal Cal with that, and a Limhurst Cape, and you use Resistance Potions or Energy Potions, right?
Energy pots, it depends because some people, and this is like about swaps and stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into in more detail in a
Yeah.
moment, but some teams, the DPS will swap to a Fiend Cowl in order to purge your Limhurst Cape or your Royal Cowl, and then you won't have enough mana. So if you see that the enemy DPS has a Fiend Cowl, you need to have energy pots in your inventory.
I'll quickly insert in here the swaps because it's probably going to be talked about a lot with all builds. So swaps are basically you have a base build that you're gonna use mostly against something that is an all-in build. So which is like something that will just rush at you as soon as you can and just fuck you. So you want to have something on that is good against that. And if you see what the other cunts have, then you swap your items that you bring with you in your inventory, and you will have to stay out of combat for the 10 seconds until your cooldowns come back up. What do you say? Pocket pick against certain matchups are pog. Yes. Since some pocket picks, which are the swaps in your inventory, can utterly win you a match, like say you're running like a Fiend Robe and you have a Mage Robe in your inventory, and the other team is using normal bows, which rely on the bow E, which is going to be an enchant, and then you can just swap to a Mage Robe and a Fiend Cal if you do have a Fiend Cal, and you can just keep purging the bow E's, and their damage is equivalent to 0 almost. So you can just destroy a comp like that. So that's basically what pocket picks are. They are items in your inventory that you swap to once you know what the other team is playing. And that is why you should usually have items on you that are good against teams that can just rush you. So basically, all in builds, double DPS builds. Healer DPS, they can't really rush you that well, since they don't have the mobility or they don't just like jump at you instantly, and you can just space out a bit more before they come at you. So we were at healer DPS. So healers usually run life touch staff if you're a holy, or a druidic staff if you're a nature, but you don't really play nature like Quazars said because nature bad.
I would say the only exception to this is if you remember we played against Sorab once, he was
Yeah.
on the perma.
Yeah.
I would say that's one of the few the only obviously exception if you know what you're doing, but if you're
Yeah.
new, just don't bother.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the healer build usually, like we said, Herb of Purity, Fiend Robe, Mage Robe. Do you have any other swaps with you? So the meta
for
would,
the
yeah,
for the healer, life touch staff, obviously Royal Cowl. I run it by.
or by default.
I have Merc Hood, Clerical. Clerical is specifically against certain one shot, like double pike. The invis pikes is the most obvious one. It's also against like a snipe crossbow type of thing. Merc Hood against the stun lock plus DPS, such as Quarterstaff and Baden or Quarterstaff and Blazing Staff. You want to use a Merc Hood. Some people like to run Hunter Hood. I'm personally not a big fan, but that's definitely also a viable choice. Uh, Once again, if you're running a budget version and you don't want to buy a Robe of Purity, you can run a Fiend Robe, but then you definitely need a Mage Robe. I mean, I would recommend the Mage Robe swap anyway against bow users, but it definitely need one if you're running Fiend Robe just against other Robe because Avalonian Robe of Purity completely counters the Fiend Robe. If you just have a Mage Robe swap, you completely counter the enemy robe, and you get buff, defensive buff from the Mage Robe as well. For the boots, you run Night Boots. I would say what we usually do is we have run by default, and then when we see what the enemy team is running, we swap to the actual ability. Normal run. This is mainly against other like double warp, so you can catch them because they're gonna hit you once, then you're not able to swap. You're stuck without mobility. They can just move in and out and kite you out. With regular run on, you have a way out of that. You can just run away, swap to whatever you need to swap to. Oh yeah, Hunter Hoods is something I'm sure we'll mention a bit, but against double warbow, Hunter is really good.
Yeah.
And for the cape, Limhurst cape, I would say have res pot, Limhurst pot in your inventory. I run the resistance pots by default, like against all in comps.
And you swap to
Energy pots
Limhurst
in your
Potion.
inventory. Sorry, what?
You swap to Limhurst Potion then against healer DPS?
Limhurst potion.
That's what you called it.
Did I say that? Oh,
Yeah.
whoops. Um, okay, what I meant to say, run resistance potions by default. I have energy pots in my inventory, specifically against the comps where I mentioned where the DPS runs a fiend cow. Healing pots against rats when we split up and we start chasing. Because I also have a swap for the one-handed frost. You don't need to run a one-handed frost. There's other weapons as well, but that's my favorite for catching rats. What I do is then I swap to healing pots just in case, because I'm not gonna have a healing stick just in case the rat tries to 1v1 me. I have the healing pot just in case. And I run the tome, the book on the offhand, but I've seen some people say that the what you call it,
Mist Caller?
the mist color. Yeah. Some people say the mist color is better. I'm not really 100% sure on that. But they're definitely both viable. I think obviously omelets. Omelets, yeah.
Omelets for food.
I think that's it.
That's
I
basically
covered it.
everything about healers. So with a healer, you have a DPS. If you're using a healer DPS comp, there are a lot of different DPS choices, and we've made a lot of videos about that on Quazars channel. And you can, yeah.
Which would be better, double DPS or healer DPS?
So they're both viable options. Like there's not really a best build in my opinion, except probably like a healer carving or something. But like you can have very good success with any build. Like
Both.
yeah, both are amazing. Like any of these meta builds that are being used are used because they have such a high win rate. And as long as you're a better player than the other team, or even if you're a worse player and outplay them, then all of these builds that we're talking about can have a very high win rate. Especially because there's also a bunch of trash players in Hellgates, and you're gonna automatically win against them unless you Pepega somehow.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say like just use what you're comfortable with and start just playing with that. So yeah, DPS with a healer. Usually, so there's melee options, which are broadsword, carving sword. Um, broadsword, carving sword. You don't really use a claymore, also great. Um, axes. You rarely see axes in Hellgates, but they're also viable, like bear paws or infernal scythe, I would say. What other melee choices are there? We'll talk
No
about
duels?
spears in a second. Sorry?
Dual swords fell out of the meta.
Yeah, dual swords. Yeah, they used to be okay, but they're not really used
Oh,
anymore.
they dropped? Okay.
Yeah. Um.
Mainly, sorry for
Yeah,
interrupting,
no
but
problem.
the main reason is that people finally found out how to play against. They just sit apart from each other, and you'll never be able to hit your E on both of them. And that way, it's just objectively worse than the broadsword, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then you also, of course, have Black Hands as a melee choice with a healer. You can use Black Hands, which also works pretty well, but it doesn't have as much mobility as a sword or axe.
But how do you even kill people with healer and black hands?
You kill their energy bar, then they die
Yeah.
by default.
We've actually
We have a video
have a
about
video
that.
about that, right? Yeah. We have a video about
Yeah.
healer Black
Yeah.
Hands, so you can watch that if you want to know more about that.
On your channel?
On
Yeah.
Quazars'
On
channel,
Quazars.
yes. Quazars' channel.
The Pepega 2v2 Hellgates with Lockbox playlist. I think every single build we have there is at least like tier.
Tier 1, Tier 2.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
I would say Tier 1.
I think the cursed skull might be like. I mean, it's still cursed is so strong, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I would say Tier 0
the
is like
fire.
Tier 0 is like carving and shit.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, all right, then at least tier 1. Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically all the melee options. Range options, you have a lot more. You have you can use a light crossbow. You can also be using bolt casters. Snipe crossbow not as much. We've seen normal bows a lot. It's a great option for range. Then you have all of the magic weapons. So what you normally see, not really that much anymore, but you used to see great fire staff a lot. And also, frost is not nearly as much seen. It's very rare to see a frost staff, which is actually quite. I want to do a frost staff build with the Quasars.
Yeah, do a perma or what?
Permafrost, I would want to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And then curse,
You
obviously.
were asking what we were supposed to play. There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, there we go. Got a build for us. All right, and curse, obviously, almost every single curse weapon is used except for damnation staff. Yeah, I think curse is probably one of the more strong choices, especially against newer players because they don't know how to out heal the curse. So the strengths. Let's just go around the whole table about weapons. So the strengths about curse is damage over time, and the newer players will also struggle with keeping up with the heals. And but they also have a weakness that they can't kill an enemy as fast as, for example, against a double DPS. And their curse stacks can also be purged by guardian helmets, which you can see by black hands, light crossbow, or double bow, or something like that. So it definitely has its strengths and weaknesses, but it's still a top tier weapon, I would say. Best curse weapons, I would say, probably Great Curse, One-Handed Curse, and Life Touch. All of them,
Life curse.
yeah, life curse, not life touch. Derp. Yeah, all of these would be what I would consider the best curse weapons. You also see some like curse skull, and you also see some demonic staff every now and then, but they're not as strong as the 3 before mentioned ones. Frost. Frost has a lot of burst damage, and I would say also has some AoE damage if the two players are too close to each other, and it can also surprise some people. I would think so, but it's also again you have to point and click, and it can be easily purged if you have mage robe or something. You can purge the scholar robe or the Morgana cape, and you're kind of cucked. So there's that. Fire staffs. Fire staffs used to be amazing because of fire artillery. But these days, people understand fire artillery a lot more, and you can interrupt it a lot easier. I mean, not a lot easier, but people understand that they have to interrupt the fire artillery, and that's like most of the damage of fire staffs. You don't really see other fire staff. You might see a meatball now and then, but it's not as good as a great fire staff. Black hands. Black hands are great in damage, but they lack mobility. And they also have a purge on their E, and also the E is also a mini, I guess, a stun. So you can maybe stop a healer from healing for a second or something, and also purge necessary things like a bow E or a royal cowl on a healer. And yeah, Black Hands, pretty solid. Not the best, not the worst, but a solid option in my opinion. Let's talk about spears. So one-handed spear is normally a pocket pick, and I'll talk about that in a second.
So, since you talked about Black Hands and it's like a dagger tree, aren't there other weapons from daggers viable in Hellgates, and in which comps?
One-handed dagger.
There are some daggers which are viable, like Bloodletter and Deathgiver, which are viable and dagger pair, but they're not viable with a healer. So I'm not talking about those yet. So Black Hand is the only one which is actually good with a healer, in my opinion, out of the dagger tree.
Oh, is the spear good with healer?
Spear,
Not enough
not
damage.
really. It's not really in the meta. It's a bit niche, and it doesn't really output enough damage to be considered meta. But yeah, I'll talk about a couple spear things later on in the video. Yeah, with a healer, bow, strong, simple. Yeah, just strong and simple. Just auto attacking enemies while using the E does a lot of damage, and people might have a hard time keeping up with the heals. But it can also be easily purged, which makes the bow not as good, and it can be easily countered by that. Light crossbow, it's actually a very solid choice. The only downside of a light crossbow is that the E can be cleansed with a guardian helmet. Not sure if it can be cleansed with a life touch staff, but I don't think so.
No,
Yeah,
you can't.
yeah. But other than
Would
that,
suck otherwise.
yeah. Other than that, I think light crossbow does an exceptional amount of damage and is pretty understated. We can also do this at some point. We can just do light crossbow healer. Yeah, I think it does a surprisingly good amount of damage, and it can also burst double DPS players pretty fast, unless they have a guardian helmet, which is sucks. Yeah, light crossbow, super solid. Would recommend. Axes. Axes are okay. They have good damage, and also because of the bleed stacks, you can get the bleed stacks and reduce healing by 20% if you have 3 stacks on enemies. Yeah, just queuing enemies and holding the bleed stacks. The one thing again with axes is that you don't have mobility much at all. So you might, if you get like Fiend Robed or Robe of Purity away, you're gonna have a rough time getting back unless you have, say, Bear Paw E on. Also, Bear Paw E is not the easiest skill to land always because it's a wedge, so people can just like slightly move out of the wedge, and it's a bit delayed, the skill, so not the easiest to land. And then we go to the meta, the swords, Qs giving you the movement speed stacks and attack speed stacks, which gives you a lot of DPS and also gives you the ability to move a lot faster and makes you able to keep up with a healer or keep up with another DPS and just stick onto them basically. Also the parry strike being super strong since you can reflect almost any single big attack, and it's a great way to deny damage from yourself. The meta swords used to be broadsword and dual swords, but currently it's more carving and claymore. Claymore is coming back to the meta a little bit, but carving is definitely the superior choice out of the sword category right now with a healer. Simply because you can get the E to hit on both players. If they're a healer or DPS, you can get the hit on both players. And if it's double DPS, you can also get the E pretty simply on both players and get a lot of damage out by that and hopefully burst the target pretty quickly. Then the armor with healers or healer DPS on a DPS, the armors. So usually you would be running Herb of Purity, which knockbacks a lot of things. But if you can't afford a Robe of Purity, then you usually are running a Fiend Robe by default. Also, you will usually have a Mage Robe in your inventory. And yeah, this is for actually, melee is using mostly Robe of Purity and Fiend Robe, since you can push the enemies with the Fiend Robe while you're in melee. And Mage Robe you usually have it in your inventory against bows and other robes of purity. Helm slot. There's a lot of different helm slots that you can use. Most commonly, the default helm that you have on is going to be the Cleric Cal, since the Cleric Cal can stop any kind of one shot on you. So say some guys come with a double pike or like a quarterstaff and a blazing staff, you can clerical that, and then once they run away after they've used their combo, you can swap out to another helmet, which in that situation would be the Merc helmet, since it's on a lower cooldown and you can instantly get the CC off of you. Swaps on melee DPS. There's a lot of swaps for helmets. So you would have the clerical. You can have a fiend cowl swap. You can have a cultist cowl swap. So fiend cowl is going to be good against healer DPS and against bows. There's not really other things that you can purge with it that are as good. Cultist cowl. It's just a nice extra damage that you can just put on a healer or a DPS or a double DPS that they kill themselves if they keep hitting you. Mercenary Hood, which is... This is not a Mercenary Hood, this is a Mercenary Hood. So Mercenary Hood is great against any kind of CC lockdown, since it's a purge from CC on a pretty low cooldown. And yeah, that's why you run a Mercenary Hood. A Hunter Hood, you would only run this against like a Warbow or some snipe build. But That's basically if you would bring a hunter. I don't usually bring a hunter suit myself because it's a bit niche. Helmets and plate. Not really anything I would use in plate as a healer DPS. So that's all from the plates or the helmet section. Robes, we've already talked about that. And boots. Boots is almost always going to be knight boots. Some people like to run guardian boots, but I would recommend not to use guardian boots with a healer, since using the guardian boots negates half of the healing that you're gonna get from your healer, since you basically double your HP, so you're gonna get less healing overall when you come back down to normal size. Night boots are just amazing. They have solid mobility when you're trying to get back to your target, and they can also absorb a lot of damage from the shield. You can also help your healer with night boots, so you can just jump to your healer and give them a shield if they're getting focused hard and block some big skill. Other boots that I sometimes use is gonna be cultist cow or cultist sandals, sorry. And that's because they reduce the healing received and reduces the resistances. So you can pop these on a healer or a DPS. They'll get a bit less healing, and you can hopefully get a kill on the enemy. Also, currently, a new helmet that I didn't remember about is the Hood of Tenacity, which reduces the healing received and the healing output by 50%. So if you pop this on a healer, their healing output is negated by a fuck ton. So they basically can't heal much at all for 4 seconds, which forces them to pop defensive, or they will die. Yeah, that's about all of the armor choices that you would run as a DPS player. You can obviously see what we use with different kind of builds on Quazars' YouTube if you're interested in a single type of DPS and we happen to have a video on it, which we most likely will. So yeah, I think that's about it for healer DPS, or actually as a DPS you... Oh yeah, and this fucking swaps. So as a DPS you normally run resistance potions. If you get bursted, you can just pop a resistance potion. Swaps, sometimes you have to swap to energy potion depending on what build you're using, and that's also going to be explained in Quasars' videos. If you happen to choose a build, then there will be shown that you're using energy potions with that build. Healing potions are used if you swap to a one-handed spear, and you are going to swap to a one-handed spear as a DPS against builds that like to kite a lot, so a quarterstaff and a blazing staff or something like that, as well as double warbow. You're gonna want to run the one-handed spear so that you can catch up with the warbows and keep up with them and just kill them. One-handed spear really counters the warbows since you have so much mobility and you can actually keep up with the warbow players. Yeah, poisons. Some builds use poisons. I've started to not use poisons as much anymore. I like energy potions more, depending on the builds. But some builds will need poisons, like a curse build will need poisons against good teams, at least. I think that's all about healer DPS. What do you think, Quasars?
I think that covers about everything.
Yeah.
Now we go on to 5v5s, right?
No, that now we go to now we go to double DPS. So double DPS, it's basically the same things that we've talked about in healer DPS, but you have 2 DPS players instead of a healer DPS. Yeah. Also, yeah, some amazing comps in double DPS. It's gonna be Light Crossbow Blackhands, which is one of the best double DPS builds, which combos off the light crossbow E and the black hands E, and you can instantly burst a target by that. And we also have a video about that on Quazars' YouTube. And Black Hand's Claymore is basically the same as Light Crossbow Black Hands, but instead of Light Crossbow you have the Claymore, and the E is also stacked. Yeah, it's gonna be less good because double melee, but if you can't run a Light Crossbow for some reason, Claymore is also suitable, since they both are E's that you get instant damage, which is high instant damage as well. Double bow is often used, so it's just a normal healer DPS bow build, which is used twice. But you can also swap some things. You can have an average double bow build. I would say is either Hunter Hood or Hellion Hood, with a Mage Robe and Guardian Boots. So you just pump out survivability, and you would also use healing potions since you don't have a healer. So just pump out the survivability and just stack the bow E's and try to burst a single target down as quickly as possible. Yeah, that's basically what I just said, except the cleric rope. I don't like cleric rope as much as a bow, but it can also be used.
How is Death Givers?
So yeah, Death Givers. If you run Death Givers, you would be running either double Death Givers, I would say, or yeah, I would basically, if I were to run Death Givers, I would only be running with 2 Death Givers, and it would be the very common Flaccid Baron build that I would be using, which would be Death Givers, Stalker Hood, Assassin Jacket, Hellion Shoes. It's
What do you focus with double death giver? So let's say you face DPS and healer. You
so
go on the healer or you go on the DPS?
um so if you're using double Death Givers, normally you would just whittle down your enemy, but since you're facing a healer DPS, you would probably most likely have a poison as a backup for one of the Death Givers. You would throw the poison on the healer, and then you would just try and use, I think, first use 2 Death Giver E's with 3 stacks, wait for a bit, and then go in for the kill if he's not full HP. But be careful if you use all of your E stacks, or like but 2 E's at the same time, or like if you use both of your E's and you'll have your E on your cooldown, because if you do that, you're not gonna have any more damage and you're just gonna have to run away. And with Death Givers, running away is not gonna be the easiest task, since it's more about chasing targets. But if you can't burst someone down, just restart the fight if possible.
So like the problem is, so you were talking about like builds for healers, right? And
Yeah.
like I think that came out kind of a lot is like clerical. So clerical kind of fucks up the
Yeah.
giver's plans.
So yeah,
And usually like
so
any-
any good team, that's why Death Giver is not meta. So any good team can fuck over Death Givers very easily, since they're gonna have resistance potions, they're gonna have cleric cal, they're gonna have a lot of different things.
does like dagger pair share the same fate?
Yeah, I would say Dagger Pair. That's why also Dagger Pair is not meta, but it can also. It's more like burst damage compared to Death Givers, since the damage is instantaneous. Unlike Death Givers, which it's instantaneous, but it's not as much damage as like a Dagger Pair, which bursts. But with a Dagger Pair, 2 Dagger Pair players, you would really want to see inspect the enemy to see what they have. And if somehow they actually changed gear, and if you can spot that they're changed their gear, just instantly go for that person who changed gear, since they won't have any cooldowns. But yeah, it's the same thing. As soon as you Hellion Shoes to the target and you have 3 stacks and you E them, or if you Hellion Shoes to the person, they might instantly use their Cleric Cal. And sometimes you can actually just like, no, like, how do you say it? Predict that they're going to use the Cleric Cal. So as soon as you Hellion Shoes to them, you just wait for like half a second to see if they use their clerical or not. If they do, you can just wait a couple seconds, and as soon as the clerical comes off, you can just use your E's on them, and maybe you'll get lucky and kill them instantly.
So, like for dagger pair, you would run something along the lines of Spectre Hood, Assassin Jacket, Hellion Shield.
Yeah, that's a perfectly fine build.
Because like alternative is like Stalker Hood for
yeah,
more
Stalker
damage.
is also fine, but yeah. Yeah, the best tip
Yeah.
is to not run those builds. They're very niche. They're very niche, and they're not really in the meta at all. Since good players can play against that very easily. It's more of a niche build in my opinion. Other double DPS builds.
So since you were talking about daggers,
Daggers.
since you were talking about daggers, just to finish like the dagger category, do you like about Bloodletter? Any
So
double
Bloodletter
DPS comp
can
for
also be
Bloodletter?
used, but the builds that you would use is probably going to be either light crossbow or snipe crossbow. So I would personally choose light crossbow, but then again, like it's gonna be the same thing as Black Hand's light crossbow, but just a bit worse. So light crossbow.
Because you don't have the stun.
Yeah, because you don't get the stun from the E. Light Bloodletter can also go well with dagger pair and snipe crossbow. If you can get the snipe crossbow off, the enemy's probably either fully dead or they're very low. So if you instantly go in with the Bloodletter E, you can finish them off. But it's gonna be the same thing that it's either do or die. If you don't kill the enemy with your combo, you're gonna die, basically. Same thing with you can also use it with dagger pair. The same thing. Yeah, it's quite a do or die kind of situation. Hello. Yeah. Basically double DPS. You can basically use any kind of DPS weapon, which is solid, and just go in, have some fun, just learn what people are using. Yeah. Double warbow build. You would use as more of a kiting build. So basically, you're just staying away from your targets, using Ray of Light and the Warbow E to try and just whittle the enemy down, as well as the Q, the long-range Q on bow, which is Deadly Shot, I believe. Yeah, so you just keep using those. Ray of Light the enemy if they get closer to you, and just use it off cooldown, and just whittle the enemy down. And if you do manage to get like one ray of light on a person and you have everything up, you can basically just use everything else, both players. So the other player also uses a ray of light. You both use a bow E's or warbow E's. And you can also use Avalonian Cowl if you happen to have an Avalonian Cowl with you, both, which all does some extra damage. So if you happen to get that off, you can basically instant kill a target, which I recommend using warbow, double warbow instead of using like a dagger pair, or anything like that, since it's a lot more viable than than the daggers. So warbow's amazing. Just kite, keep kiting, keep running away, and then just whittle your enemy down. You can also just easily win against healer DPS because they can't keep up with you, and you can just kill them if they haven't got the right swaps. You would normally run Guardian helmets just to get the heal back a bit, or Guardian helmets, or if you can afford, use Avalonian Cowls. But if you can't afford Avalonian Cowls, just use Guardian helmets. You would be using Cleric Robe. Yeah, budget version is going to be Guardian Helmet, Cleric Robe. You either use Scholar Sandals or some kind of boots with Run, but you basically use the Scholar Sandals to get your energy back. Cape, you can use a Thetford Cape, Forge Sterling Cape, or a Limhurst. No, not really a not really a Limhurst Cape.
Forge Sterling.
Yeah, I said for Sterling Cape.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the OP version, like Quasars just typed, is gonna be the Cal of Purity, which is the Avalonian Cal, which with the beam, as well as the Cultist Robe, which heals you, with Scholar Sandals to get energy back. And you can also bring some swaps, like a Mage Robe against bows. Do you even bring a Mage Robe against bows? You just run away and Ray of Light, right?
Think he just ran away.
Fucking darn. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So that's basically what you want to bring as a war bow duo. I think there's only 2 more builds that I would want to talk about, which is gonna be actually 3 more builds that I want to talk about. So double pike, which is a one-shot pike build. So you would be getting all of your stacks. So okay, let's say tell the build first. So we'd be running a demon helmet, a druid robe, soldier boots, pike, and a demon cape with invis pot and a beef stew. So what you're gonna try to do is pop your druid robe and start stacking your Q stacks, as well as use your soldier boots and your demon helmet, and then you run in on them once you know where they are, obviously, and you use your invis potions before you get them on your screen, or like right as you get them on your screen, and you basically auto attack and E a person at the same time with your friend, and the person, if you time it perfectly, the other person is not going to have any time to react and just destroy them. Yeah, and there's Quasars has typed the combo on, which is the druid robe, Q stack, soldier boots, another Q stack, W, which is the inner rage, uh,
Inner focus.
inner focus, yeah, which is the movement speed. Another Q stack, and then you use the helmet, which is the demon helmet, and then you use the invis pot, and then you auto attack and E on target, which should, if performed perfectly, should instantly kill your target without them knowing anything happened, and then you can basically just kill the other player pretty simply by just auto
I have a
attacking.
question about that.
Yeah.
Let's say a person has Hunter Hood and they, like, if you're attacking me and I pop my Hunter Hood, will the damage be reflected to both of the people?
So
The point is that you go invis, they can see you. They can't pop a hunter hood, even if they have it.
yeah, so
Okay.
if the only way you can counter double pike is if they see you coming. But yeah, other than that, there's really no counter to pike unless you can get a lucky cleric cal, or if they mistime the pike ease, and you get like that small time frame where you can drop your cleric cal. Uh, the only way a hunter hood would work if they preemptively use the hunter hood, and then you can just go on another target. But that is like very rare to happen.
I did that in one of our videos, but with a cleric robe.
Yeah. Yeah. Just be aware of your surroundings. If you feel like if you haven't seen an enemy team at all the whole game, just search around the map a bit and you might find them. 2 more builds. One of them being the quarterstaff plus blazing, or tomb hammer plus blazing, or tomb hammer plus baton bow, or quarterstaff plus baton bow. So that's basically. So let's talk about quarterstaff blazing. So basically, a quarterstaff build is gonna try and CC one person and then isolate that person. So a quarterstaff will run in, use his E on a target, and then wind wall the other player away. And then the blazing staff will, as soon as the quarterstaff has put down his E, which roots for 7 seconds or 6 seconds or something. The Blazing Staff will drop his E, and that should melt the target. That is why you should normally be running a Cleric Cal as a healer DPS or a double DPS or something like that. So that if they do happen to get the CC off and they do happen to get the Blazing Staff or Baton Bow, which both do basically the same, then you can just Cleric Cal and deny the whole build. Yeah. Also, Holy Blessing, if a healer uses a Holy Blessing on himself, he can walk through the Wind Wall.
You should also explain how to actually beat them, because you survive it, they'll just.
Yeah. So, the only way to really beat a Quarterstaff Blazing is if they fuck up. Yeah, that's basically the only way if you can win against the Quarterstaff Blazing or Quarterstaff Badumbo. Or during the very first engagement. If you can get a very good first engagement on them, you can fuck the DPS and maybe kill them if you're lucky. But after that, when all the teams have swapped their things, it's gonna be eh. So the Quarterstaff is using a wind wall to keep the other players around, and they're just gonna kite around. And a Blazing Staff is gonna have a firewall, and he's also just gonna pop that down and just keep kiting around until they're back to full HP. And they're back ready to do the combo again, and then they'll just re-engage on you and do the combo. Yeah, so the counter to this is Holy Blessing. And also, if you're using a double DPS against this build, double DPS really destroys Quarterstaff plus Blazing, in my opinion, at the very least. But the Quarterstaff of Blazing can still get ahead if they correctly use their wind walls and firewalls and don't let the double DPS fuck them too hard. Also, double Warbow is amazing against Quarterstaff plus Blazing. The build for Quarterstaff is going to be a Demon Helmet, Knight Armor, Scholar Sandals, and a Quarterstaff with a Demon Cape, so that you can get the Demon Cape off on the guy you are Quarterstaff-ing. And the Blazing Staff person usually has a Blazing Staff, Sterling Cape, and a Assassin Hood, and either a Cultist Robe or a Cleric Robe, depending if you can afford the Cultist Robe or not, and with the Scholar Sandals. So the Assassin Hood helps him get the cooldowns back. The Cultist Robe is a heal, so you can get the your health back, energy back. And yeah, you just basically run around until you get your cooldowns back and re-engage. Yeah, Firewall on the Blazing W. And the last but not least build is going to be the Rat. So you're gonna see a lot of rats in Hellgates, and the rat meta has changed a lot, in my opinion, but people still like to run the old rat builds as well. So a rat is a person who goes in either alone or with a second rat, and their main objective is to kill you with the mobs inside the Hellgate, or just go for the middle chest and try and get the loot for themselves. So the way that rats would kill a player, if you're unfamiliar with rats, is that they get to you to follow them, and then the rat tries to damage the mobs, the melee mobs, which are usually around the bosses. There's two melee mobs there. They try to get those two melee mobs pretty low, and then either graveguard you into the mobs or use a wind wall. So basically, they kill the mobs, they graveguard you into them, or they wind wall you into them, and then you get downed, and then they either finish you, or if possible, they'll run away, and then swap to something that you can 1v1 the other player with. So that's one of the ways that people can kill you as a rat against players. So a rat would have a lot of swaps, and an experienced rat can kill players very easily. But then again, if you are a very experienced player, you should be pretty experienced at dealing with rats, and you shouldn't die to these mob explosions. Yeah. Yeah, experienced rats will also be using an undead cape, so as soon as you get them to low enough HP, they're just gonna undead cape and use demon boots and run away so that you can't really chase them and you have no idea where they are. And they'll be like on the other side of the map as soon as their undead cape goes off. And they can also use the undead cape to just portal out of the Hellgate. So they pop their undead cape and they go to their own portal, which they came in with, and they just zone out. Yeah. The other thing about rats is that then these days that they can bring a one-handed dagger instead of a bloodletter with the Hellion hood. So they just run in for the middle chest with the one-handed dagger. They pop their E and they pop the Hellion hood and they start smacking the middle chest. Since now, if you deal over half of the HP of the middle chest, you will get the loot for yourself. So that's one way a rat can get a chest these days. I've actually not used the new builds yet for ratting, but I actually kind of want to try that now. Yeah. Rats usually are running a Guardian helmet, swaps with a Hellion hood, a Merc hood. I don't think they have anything else as a swap for helmet. They use a Knight armor, they can use a Graveguard armor, they can use a Mage robe just to get the extra damage once they've killed another person, or even a Cultist robe. Some rats like to use Scholar Sandals, but Demon Boots are superior, since you can run away so fast if you're getting hunted down as a rat. Weapons, actually not sure. I think One-Handed Spear and Bloodletter are both used, as well as the One-Handed Dagger, which is used to destroy the middle chest. I would personally be using a One-Handed Spear, simply because it can easily kill the melee mobs, and easily Knight Armor, or yeah, Wind Wall the enemies into the mob explosions. And you would be using Cabbage Soup to get that health regen once you're out of combat, since you're just trying to run away from your enemies. And Healing Potions, so that you can just get the extra survivability. I don't think there's much else to rats in Hellgates.
So, how hard is it to gap close to a spare player?
So a rat is just built for mobility. So unless you have two players with which both have builds meant for catching rats, it's going to be very hard to catch a rat, and you need good coordination and you need good builds to catch a rat. Unless the rat's bad.
I missed a bit of the explanation, but like with the rat builds, you mean the builds that go in solo hoping to get the loot, or builds that go in solo and like steal the chest actually?
So I believe rats these days, they are doing this both things with the one build. I've also seen some people with actual just like Papija gear, and they just try and kill outside bosses, but that's just like noobs just killing outside bosses for that little bit of fame that they can get. But I do believe that rats these days, they always have the one-handed dagger in their inventory in case that they have to destroy the chest in the middle, and they also have the bloodletter or one-handed spear to kill the big mobs and get you pulled into them, so they get damaged by the mob explosions.
On that note, usually the weapon switch is sometimes I saw the nature as well as a weapon
Yeah.
switch.
Yeah, there are also nature rat builds, which use a great nature staff and some other armors, which I'm not nearly as familiar with, but I've seen them work a lot as well. They would also be using like a cleric cowl or any cloth helmet so that they can boop the enemies into mobs, as well as the knight armor to use the wind wall and boop people into mobs, and in that way try and kill another person. Yeah. Any other questions about 2v2 Hellgates? I don't think I'm gonna have time to do 5v5 Hellgates or GVGs, unfortunately. I think I'll do those in the next video, since we've already been going for about an hour.
Just mention 5 warbows, please.
Five warbows is definitely a meta build in 5v5s. Kappa.
It's retarded, and most of the time it doesn't work unless you
Exactly.
have like absolute potatoes against you.
Yes.
Well, like
One-
honestly, you have lots of CC because so it's like if you manage to hit 5 magic arrows the same guy, he'll probably die.
Yeah, but then again, you probably won't.
Yeah.
And if it's the tank, then you're probably hitting him up close. Like we played against that yesterday, and we basically just like full retard pushed into them with
Yeah.
like light crossbow and frost, and we just totally wiped them.
Yeah.
And they had to come out like in actual gear.
Yeah, if you're going 5 warbows, you really have to know what you're doing and actually have like very over geared gear, and even then you can get dicked pretty easily.
I think like you need to know what you're doing, and then like
Yeah.
you need to have a opponent that doesn't know
Yeah.
like what to do.
You could even go with frost shots just to get that extra distance and get the poke. But then again, I don't know if a healer can out heal 5 magic arrows if the warbows are using frost shots. But then again, it's warbows are pretty meh. They're pretty niche. They're pretty meme build, to be fair. So yeah, do people have any other questions about 2v2 Hellgates for now?
I do.
All right, shoot.
So one of the most popular 2v2 builds at the moment seems to be double warbow.
Yeah, that is one of the meta
And
builds.
yeah, so when you play Black Hands DPS compo, so it's like Black Hands with some kind of other DPS, so like
Yeah.
it's either light crossbow or in my case bow.
Yeah.
Wait.
Hunter Hood swap to run.
Yeah, so you would want to have run on both of your players, as well as a hunter hood swap, so that you can use the hunter hood if
Sorry,
they.
I got cold. Had to mute myself. So the thing is like, how do you actually beat? So the problem I run into personally is like they actually outrange me, like my shadow edge on
Yeah.
on the Black Hands. So if I cannot
Hunter Hood and run.
So basically, yeah, you swap to a hunter hood unless you already have a hunter hood on. You use your run to get closer to them, and then you just pop your hunter hood if as soon as they are like if you see a ray of light coming at you, you just hunter hood that. Or and if especially if or you could even save the hunter hood if they use one ray of light, and then after that they use 2 magic arrows flying at you. You can just hunter hood those. But I would just suggest running and trying to dodge, and then as soon as you, yeah. So okay, let's rephrase that. Uh, if the warbows use their boots after they've used their boots, that's really not good either. Yeah, just
Some
try
bring
just
soldier boots swap.
soldier boots. Just run at them, get the W off. You really have to land the W off the shadow edge, and if you do, just E the person. But
Back to
I
your
don't.
teammate,
Yeah, back to your
right?
teammate. Yeah. I don't see other way, unless you're both using hunter hoods, which is gonna reflect the damage back. But if the warbows are using cultist robes, then they can just heal back up. But
Most common builds like I've seen from warbows, like probably the most expensive one is like with cultist robes, but I see cleric robes.
Yeah.
So it's like guardian helmet, cleric robe, and focused run.
yeah. So yeah, you really just have to time your run, um, or like try and bait them to come towards you a bit, and then swap directions with the run and pop the run, and then just try and get the shadow edge off. And if you don't land the shadow edge, then just keep kiting until you can get the run off again, and then shadow edge into them.
Another thing is like the one-shot combo, kind of popular right now. It's like quarterstaff and blazing.
Yeah.
So in that kind of matchup, so like obviously if you run swaps, that kind of narrows it down because you just bring like cleric cowl on, and like the moment you get engaged, just go invulnerable and they're fucked.
Yeah.
We
So
mentioned that.
yeah, we basically mentioned that, but yeah, just usually just always have the clerical on as a starting position. You could also have a hunter hood on that you can just pop the hunter hood as soon as the quarterstaff stuns you. So you just pop the hunter hood as soon as that happens, and you could also have resistance potions if you happen to have those. You can just have resistance potion in your inventory and swap to those as soon as you see the quarterstaff, since swapping potions doesn't actually put your skills on cooldown. So as soon as you see the quarterstaff, just swap to resistance potions, and as soon as you can see them EU, just pop the resistance potion just before he EEs you.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Big Darthy Poo Poo.
Thanks, lads. That was very informative.
Yeah, thank you for coming, and
You sound like you're like some Hellgate gods.
I wouldn't say we're Hellgate gods. We've just played a lot of Hellgates, right, Quazars?
Hell yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I think I have good knowledge of Hellgates. I wouldn't say I'm that good at Hellgates because I think I need a lot of practice, especially on different comps than healer DPS.
Yeah.
But I think I have a good, like, if I watch a video and
You get
I
a
will
good
be able
grasp.
to see, okay, you fucked this up, and but I don't have the mechanical skills. I think not quite 100%. I think it's the same for Luckbox. We
Yeah.
have a lot of experience, but we could probably use more practice.
Yeah, we haven't played in a while, and yeah. So basically, just keep playing. You'll get better.
So now a bit. Say if you're going to do Hellgates for fame, you go for 5v5s, right?
Yeah. Basically, I mean,
And
2v2s are also like amazing fame, but not
Decent.
nearly as good as 5v5 fame.
so say the hardest like hardcore scenario where you win everything. How much fame can you do in an hour?
So probably
A lot.
So okay, let's say I'm 100 spec in everything, in 5v5 Hellgates, and we can do one 5v5 Hellgate every 10 minutes. So that's six 5v5 Hellgates in an hour. And if you're 100 spec in everything, you would get 1 million fame credits per 5v5 Hellgate. So that would be 6 million fame credits in an hour.
It's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
You serious?
Yeah.
You have to win like you in fives. It's different from twos. In twos, you're gonna run up against shitters, but in five, It's
Fives, there's
not as
not
common
really
to
as
run
much
it.
shitters, yeah.
It's really hard to win
Yeah.
fives.
Unless
Well,
you
time
have
to
like
go
a
in
very experienced.
4.1 and run some 5v5s, waiting
That's
for
what-
an empty gate.
That's what some people do. Yeah.
Yeah,
They just kill. What they do is they kill bosses and run. Basically,
but the
it's
most like
unlikely.
the middle chest in 5v5 Hellgates gives 270k fame. So there's that.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Alright. Any other questions so that I can pop this video off and start uploading a 1 hour video?
Think we're cool.
Are you cool?
So cool.
So
Cool.
cool. Alright. Unfortunately, we didn't have time for 5v5 content. I'll probably be doing that on Sunday. Since we probably will have some kind of events on the weekend. And yeah, next week I'm gonna start hosting some actual PvP events where we actually go out to the world of Albion and experience some PvP. Some people for the first time, hopefully not.
I would
Experience
suggest.
some butt fucking.
I would suggest that we do similar to how Black Orbit does it and steal a golden eagle. I mean, go over there recording afterwards.
Yeah, we can.
Sorry, I had
we
to.
We can basically go out in the world, do some shit, and then we can together watch a recording of what we did and what went wrong and what should be done better.
Because something will go wrong.
Something will go wrong.
I think diving and counter diving is probably
Yeah.
a good way to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
It's hard to find like good open world fights nowadays. I feel like
Yeah.
it's only
I
gankers,
mean,
and they just run away.
If there was still Craigmore or Mardale, I would probably go there first just to get a hang of what PvP is.
Yeah, yeah, that was so much fun. I learned PvP there,
It was like an amazing way to just learn PvP.
and the mechanics of the red circle thing.
Yeah,
Off,
and also
what,
like
what's it?
learning skills and shit. Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll thank you all for joining this.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, what is your question, Quazars?
Okay, so I'm trying to get into twos,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm running Bedrock Mace. What's the best helmet?
I would say probably a boop helmet, so probably like a scholar cowl, and just have the boop on it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
You can try to boop the people out of the map.
Exactly.
The Darth special.
The Darth special, yes. Okay. Alright. Thanks for coming, and I hope to see you guys on Sunday and also next week's PvP sessions, which are going to be mostly towards EU players, but also NA players if they happen to be online.
Oh, you're EU based.
Yeah, I am EU based, but our guild is mixed. Our guild's international, so
Okay.
we also have Deathwish doing PvP events, but he is doing them more on NA times. Which, yeah. Alright, I'll be closing up the recording now.